Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I am Dean Crago, and I will be taking you for this session. Now, the first thing on our list of things to do was introduction, and as all of you have had a go, I think I'll just finish off. And the reason why I'm up here in front of you is because I originally, this is back in Australia, trained as a registered nurse, and from the start, I had a passion for accident and emergency nursing. So once I finished training, I then moved from sort of eastern Australia right to the centre of Australia in Alice Springs and started my nursing career in some quite remarkable sort of circumstances. So from then on, I spent quite a few years travelling around the Northern Territory and Western Australia doing accident and emergency nursing, amongst some other things. And this encompassed a lot of quite rural and at other times very remote area nursing where you were literally left to your own devices, and the nearest help came via a plane. So quite an interesting experience. I then moved over to the United Kingdom 13 years ago and have worked in a number of different A&E departments around the country, principally in Guernsey, where I spent nearly 8 years in their A&E department, so that was good. While I was in Guernsey, I then sort of decided I wanted another challenge, and I got a part-time job with St John's as a trainer. And I was very fortunate there to meet a gentleman who trained me up in the ways of delivering first aid, and that's delivering first aid to the average person off the street, not to healthcare professionals, which I'd sort of been doing quite a lot of before then. And he was very hands-on, very practical, and certainly not all bullet point PowerPoint presentation. So what I want to try and do with you today is all going to be quite practical. Okay. The other thing I really want to stress is that if there's something I'm talking about and you don't understand it, in this session I would like you to ask a question about what it is I'm doing or anything along that line, okay? A lot of times you're asked at the end to come up with any questions that you might have, but by the time you get down to the end of dealing with CPR and a baby, you kind of forgot what you were trying to do when it came to priorities. So it's very important that we ask questions as we go along. Is that okay? Right, so bringing the attention to what we're doing today, this is quite an ambitious lineup of things that I'm looking to teach you, and quite a limited amount of time to do this. So we're going to be running through it all, but we're going to be focusing on a couple of areas in particular. Okay, so the introduction, we've pretty much got through that already. Now we're going to go into priorities in any emergency, and they're pretty straightforward, pretty common sense. You will find that most things in first aid is common sense based. All right, so what I'm here to do is basically provide you with the confidence to identify that there's a problem and then actually step up and do something. Because most people that actually die in emergency situations die because people that could otherwise have been saved die because of lack of action. Not because somebody's done something wrong, it's because people didn't actually stand up and do it. And that's all about confidence. So what I'm here to do is to provide you with some confidence that you will be able to actually sort of go into a situation and actually start to do things in a sort of a reasonable manner. Okay. Now, after that, we're going to be looking in a bit more detail at treating an unconscious casualty. That's one area which I'd really sort of like to sort of dwell on a little bit more today. We're going to move on to defibrillation, and probably what was about 6 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, we had a good talk about defibrillation. So I will go over that, but not quite in as much detail as I did last time. Okay, so we'll have a bit of a look at that issue. And then we'll be going on to cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And I'll be going into detail on how to do it. And I'll be concentrating on adult CPR as well. I will discuss babies and children, but I'll give you the differences, and so the circumstances you would do CPR on children, but I will be focusing on adults. And there's a very good reason for that, and I'll get to it when we get down there. Is everybody happy with what we're doing? Excellent. Now, given that the time, I think we should just press on. And if I start to overrun, then Mervyn, please just wave your arms wildly, and I'll get the idea that we need to go faster. Okay, so priorities in any emergency. Now, I want you to imagine that you've come here to this session today and you think you're the first person to arrive, but the doors are unlocked. So you wander yourself in and you find a person lying right there upon the floor. Can somebody suggest to me what the first thing that you should do might be? Breathing?
Summon help.
Summon help?
Recovery.
Recovery position?
Any other dangers in the area?
Dangers. How long did you say it had been since you last did some? Now, if you came through that door and saw a victim lying on the floor here, you might not think there'd be too many dangers around, but in other situations it might not be so. Any guesses? Well, can anyone identify some dangers that people might encounter? Electricity, possibly.
Falling objects.
Falling objects, yeah.
Is this guy unconscious or is he?
We haven't got that far yet.
So
We haven't got there yet. Gas, yeah. Chemicals,
Alcohol.
might be, yeah. Absolutely. Fire, yeah. What about outside? What do you think would be the biggest single killer of a rescuer in the country?
Vehicles.
Vehicles, absolutely. So incidents on the sides of roads, which are very common places for an emergency to happen. Don't actually look for the other passing vehicle, and you must always check for danger in any situation, regardless of how major or minor it might be. You did mention a few other good examples, and yes, you must look for dangers. You must use all your senses, smell, sight. Some are much more obvious, like the raging fire, as opposed to electricity, which can be quite hidden, very rare, but it's possible. If you came in that door and you saw a person lying there and they had some sort of a power tool in their hand, what would you do? Unplug it, yeah, go to the power point, switch it off. That's probably the most logical thing. If you're in a situation where you were unable to switch the power off, what can we do then?
You can find some non-conducting object to knock the power tool out of their hand, so they disconnect from the electricity.
Absolutely. And as I said, I was taught by St. John's, and what the St. John's manual tells you to do is get a broom handle and knock it away. There might be one in there, but you know, it might be a bit short of broom handles. But the idea is something non-conductive. So what if you're in a situation where you couldn't turn the power off, you didn't have something non-conductive to knock whatever it is away from them? In fact, they were sort of coiled in a bunch of wires, and you know, presented quite a bit of a problem. What would you do then?
Call for help.
Call for help? How would you call for help? Telephone. Okay, you need to find the appropriate person to turn the power off to where that person is. If you know where that power point is, then fine, where the fuse box is, okay. But the point is, it doesn't matter how badly injured that person is, until you are absolutely sure that you are safe to approach that person, you cannot do anything about it. Does that make sense? The last thing that you need is for somebody to actually, well, for you or the rescuer to go in trying to help the person and end up just lying on the floor next to them. It's a very common sense point, but it is very important, and it will always come first in any situation. Okay? So, you've come through that door, you've seen the casualty, you've had a look around, there's no obstructions, no dangers, everything's safe. What should we consider then? Sorry? Breathing? You said?
Ask and talk to us.
Talk to them? Okay, you want to talk to them. Why? Why do you want to talk to them? Response. Conscious level. So why do you want to find out if the person's conscious or not? Why is that important?
You could ask them questions.
We'll have a look at how we're going to do it in a moment, but why is it important? It's all well and good saying, yeah, do that.
Because there's a world of difference between somebody who's lying there taking a nap and somebody whose heart is stopped.
Well, absolutely. If you,
Further help if they are unconscious.
for example, if you went straight into CPR without checking first, you might end up with a bit of an injury yourself. Absolutely. Sorry, you said,
They
Gary?
may need further help if they're unconscious.
It's certainly going to dictate what you're going to do next.
Yeah.
And you certainly know if they're unconscious, this is a serious situation, isn't it? But there is an even more important reason why finding out whether that person is conscious or not.
They can take instruction.
If they're conscious, they might be able to. Now, if a person is unconscious, then it stands to reason that they've got no muscular control. Is that fair enough? Pick their arm up, fall back to the ground. There's actually a muscle, there's a flaw in the human body, and it's got to do with the muscles. There's a muscle in there which actually, in an unconscious person, could prove fatal. And I think, Julie, your tongue. Now, most people, when you see someone's tongue, it's got that small little bit that sticks out of the mouth. But the tongue is actually quite a large organ, and it's muscular. And in an unconscious person, particularly one who's lying on their back, they could very easily, that tongue could very easily fall to the back of their throat, completely occlude their airway, and they could die. Now, the reason why they're unconscious could be very simple and easily correctable, but for the fact they've lost their airway, that could be the end of them. So that's why checking for response is the second most important thing that we must do. How do you think we should check a, let's use this one here. Let's say this is our victim. How are we going to check that they're conscious or not? Speak to them? That's quite reasonable, isn't it? Hello, are you okay? Hello, can you hear me? They either don't like me, they're ignoring me, or they might be unconscious. They might be deaf. Okay, so are we pinching earlobe? Could do. What else could we do?
See if their chest is rising and falling.
Well, that's something slightly different, but we will be looking at that. We're just trying to determine if this person is conscious or not. They haven't responded to our voice. We could pinch their ear. Eyes?
See whether their eyes are open or whether they're reacting.
If they're moving, that might be an indication that there's something going on. Now we're just trying to find out if they're actually conscious. I often get quite a few suggestions, which along the lines of the pinching the ear. Has anyone heard of the sternal rub, where people get their knuckles and rub their sternum, pinching their ears or pinching their fingernails, the nail beds? Another really particularly unpleasant one was where that that little soft bit in your collarbone there, sticking your thumb into that. It's generally agreed now that we don't have to actually inflict pain on them. It's generally agreed that all you simply have to do is put your hands on their shoulders, give it a squeeze, but at the same time, give them a direct command. Open your eyes! And if they don't respond to that, you can hand on your heart say this person is unconscious. All right? So you don't have to dwell on it. Just speak to them. If they don't respond, put your hands on their shoulders, squeeze, direct command, and no response, unconscious. Simple as that, and it's very important. So.
They're very drunk. Would they still have that same response? Could they not just be out?
They could be extremely drunk. They could be have taken some drugs. That could be anything. But if they're not responding in a reasonable fashion, then their level of consciousness is reduced, and therefore they're going to potentially have a problem with their tongue. And it's important because that tongue, that potential problem with the tongue, is the thing that's most likely going to kill this person regardless of whatever it is that's actually wrong with them. Does that make sense? So we must allow for that tongue and sorting out that particular problem. So, right, we have so far eliminated dangers. We've identified that they're unconscious. What do you think we should do now? Sort the airway out. Now, just imagine you're here by yourself, and you've just come in and found them, and there doesn't seem to be anybody else around. What else could we do?
Turn them onto their side. Turn them onto their side.
I like Gary's suggestion at the moment. We will come to that though. Call for help. And at this stage we're calling. We're not going for help, we're calling for help because this person's got a serious problem. We need to deal with it. So it's not appropriate if we were to leave them. But it would be very appropriate if we could get somebody else's attention. So when I say call for help, I kind of more mean shout for help. And I mean shout for help loudly. Can somebody help me? Like that, but much louder. Now, if you come to that door, you see them, obviously you don't have to wait that long until you shout for help. If you've got a concern over there, then shout from there. But if you haven't shouted for help by this point, then please do, because that's the most appropriate thing to do. If you can get somebody else's attention, you can get them to go and source an ambulance or whatever it is you need, okay? And you can still be here treating the casualty. Right. Okay, so we've done danger, we've done response. We've identified that they're unconscious. What are we going to do now? What's the next important thing you think?
Breathing.
Breathing. Breathing? Sorry? Airway. Why airway? Right, so we've already identified there's a potential problem with the tongue. That's got a problem, a very negative implication for the airway, so we need to fix that. Any suggestions on how we're going to fix that? What are we going to do with the airway? Yes. We call it a head tilt and a chin lift. So put the palm of your hand on the forehead, pointing in the direction you're going to tilt, 2 fingers onto the chin and tilt backwards. Now what that does is it brings the lower jaw forwards and upwards, and the tongue, which is attached to there, comes forward and upwards with it. And that will give the best opportunity for that airway to be open. Does that make sense?
They used to call it swallowing the tongue, indeed, didn't they? But isn't that a physical impossibility? It's not actually.
Well, the tongue is actually quite well attached internally, so you can't actually swallow it as such.
So by doing that, whatever, you're going to sort of free the airway. You're never going to have to pull the tongue out. It's
just a gravity problem. So gravity is just taking the tongue, it's dropped to the lower side of the airway. So by doing that, you're actually pulling it up and off the bottom of the airway, so you're opening it up. Well, you're giving it the best chance. We don't know what's happened here. They could have choked. We don't know. Now, while you're doing that, you can actually look at their mouth. And if you see something that is obvious, something which is there and obvious, then feel free to remove it. But don't go, remember in the past they used to do these finger sweeps? We don't do that anymore. You don't go sticking your great mitts down in their mouth. Any ideas why?
You could push something that's towards the back, right down there.
You could very easily impact it back into their airway. Okay, so if it's obvious, and the most obvious thing would probably be false dentures that have come loose, you take those out of the road. If there's something there obvious, take it out very quickly, but otherwise don't worry about it. Head tilt, chin lift, open up the airway. And that's great, we've now done our best with our airway. What are we doing now?
Check for breathing.
Yay, breathing. Right, where did I put it? Over here. So, we have eliminated danger, we've checked for response, we've opened up the airway. Now, breathing. What should we do there?
Go down like this.
Down like this? Close down to here?
As close as you can.
Yeah? Why am I doing that?
If there's any
Okay, so we might be able to feel their breathing. What else might we be able to do? Okay, so we might be able to see. And we might be able to hear. So look, listen, feel. You're looking down their chest, you're listening for breath, and you might be able to feel their breath. How long should we do it for?
10 seconds.
10 seconds. An excellent guess, and that's correct.
I did a lot of
I want to stress, look, listening and feeling is all very well and good, but you must check their breathing for 10 seconds. This is a crucial point. It's crucial because, okay, most people have it in their mind that they're either breathing or they're not breathing. If they're breathing, that's great. If they're not breathing, that's bad. However, there is another type of breathing, and it's called agonal breathing. Okay, now agonal breathing is characterised by very short and very shallow breaths, which isn't good. But the worst thing about agonal breathing is the rate. Now, the usual adult would probably breathe at a rate of around maybe 12 breaths a minute. Okay, agonal breathing, you might get 2 or 3 or 4 breaths a minute. Not enough for that person to survive. So if you find abnormal breathing, you must consider that to be not breathing at all. In the past, what's happened is rescuers have come in, they've opened up the airway, they've checked for breathing, they've seen a bit of chest movement, and they thought, aha, they're breathing, put them in the recovery position, and that's where they've died. So you must check the breathing for 10 full seconds. Over that time, you could well expect to see the chest rise and fall at least twice. So that way you know there is a regular breathing pattern, normal breathing. Excellent. Does that make sense?
Why is the abnormal breathing, why is that dangerous? What
No, normal breathing's great. It's the abnormal breathing.
So where
Okay, so if you're here and you see a slight bit of chest movement and you count to 10 seconds and that's all you see, that little bit of respiratory movement is not enough for this person to survive. So you must consider that to be not breathing at all, and that's going to ultimately lead us to doing cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So yes.
So it doesn't mean they're about to have a heart attack or anything, it just means that they're not getting enough oxygen, therefore they probably need CPR.
We can't necessarily diagnose what has caused that.
Yeah.
However, we would probably be suspecting a heart attack.
Right.
But if there is agonal breathing, then you know this is as serious as them actually.
Agonal breathing doesn't necessarily precede a heart attack. It doesn't mean they're maybe just about to have a heart attack.
No, it would probably indicate that they've already had the heart attack and they're about that far off completely non-breathing death type state. So it must be considered the same, because if they're left in that state, they will die.
Yeah. And CPR could help that? Or
because the situation internally inside them is so bad that CPR is pretty much the only thing that is going to help them.
And is it quite effective, CPR?
Well, we're going to find out very soon. So we will look at CPR very soon, and if you've got any other sort of doubts about it, then keep asking. But yes, we will get on to that, and you can.
Can you be unconscious and breathing?
Can you be unconscious and breathing?
Yeah, of course.
Can you be unconscious and on your back in this position and breathing? Yes, you can be. But what you'll probably find is that the casualty might have a partial obstruction, okay, and then you'll probably be able to hear them very clearly, sort of something akin to snoring, except it doesn't sound quite as, it sounds a bit worse. Does that make sense? So if they're unconscious, breathing on their back, they still could have an airway, but you probably will hear it. Okay, and that also, as you open up the airway, you'll probably hear that noise stop, because you've fully opened up the airway, so the air's passing through properly. However, if they are unconscious, if they are on their back, they are definitely at risk of losing that airway at any time. That's why this is so important. Does that make sense? Now, what we've got written up there, if there is anything you take away from today's session, is that danger, response, airway, breathing. They are the priorities in any emergency or any first aid situation. Note, we haven't gone on to circulation or anything like that. If the person is not breathing or not breathing effectively, then the chance of them having a circulation is very, very minimal. Okay, so we don't need to check it. That's what we're looking for. Any questions about priorities? Crystal clear. Excellent.
So if at this point your casualty is unconscious and you call for help and you check their airway and so on, but you also notice there's a growing pool of blood down by their ankles, what then?
Excellent, good question. This is what's important. There might be a growing pool of blood, but we must deal with these problems first. And once we've dealt with these problems, then we can move on to that pool of blood. Which brings me swiftly on to treating an unconscious casualty. What should we do with this person? Can we run off now and call an ambulance since we've made a diagnosis that they're unconscious, not breathing, or unconscious but breathing? Who's for the recovery position? Who's for an ambulance? Who hasn't made a vote at all? We must put this person in the recovery position. And we need to do that because that's the only way we can, if you're by yourself in particular, because that's the only way we can guarantee that that tongue will not fall to the back of their throat, occlude their airway and kill them, because regardless of whatever's wrong with them, regardless of whatever caused that massive pool of blood that's still building up, it's the tongue that will kill them first. So we must put them into the recovery position. Now my mannequins are good for many, many things, but not having any sort of lower body, legs, arms, that sort of thing, they're pretty useless for the recovery position. So I'm going to ask for a volunteer. You can do it. I was thinking of a South African, but... I don't mind. A willing volunteer is always good. Willing volunteer is always good.
It's safe to put them in the recovery position if you don't know what could be broken. There could be a spinal injury.
Could be. It could be.
It's still safe.
Could be anything wrong with them. If I had more time, I'd go through a spinal scenario with you. There are some other things we can do in a spinal situation. I don't quite have time to go through with them now, but I'll have a word with you after. But yes, in all circumstances, you should get them into the recovery position because it's that tongue that will kill them before anything else. Okay? So, but yes, there are some other things we can do. The only time I would suggest that you don't is if... I'll come to another scenario afterwards, okay? I'll try and come back to another scenario where we can demonstrate that a bit more if we've got time, okay? So, come on down.
Do you want me to be dramatic or just lying on the...
Just lie on the ground. You can be as dramatic as an unconscious person can possibly be. Right, that's great, that's really dramatic. Okay, where are we going to start? We've just found out that our casualty is unconscious and breathing normally, so... We better put him in the recovery position because I can hear that airway going again. So what are we going to do? Where do we start?
Near arm over the body.
Near arm over the body. I agree with the near arm. We're going to do something with this.
One arm in and one arm over.
Tuck it underneath.
Aha! Now you're really showing that it's been a while since you did the first aid training. We don't tuck it in under the body anymore. And that's because we've found in training situations when you roll over the top of it, it might hurt the arm. So what I'm about to demonstrate to you is the technically correct way to do a recovery position in a training situation, which is most likely to not injure the person that we're training on, okay? So what we need to do with this arm is into the policeman stopping traffic position. So get their elbow right up in line with their shoulder if you can, put their hand up, and usually it will sit up nice and flat like that. Everyone's anatomy is different. Sometimes the arm will sit up like that, sometimes it'll fall out like that. But generally, start up there and let the arm do what it wants to do. It's out of the road. Where to next? Sorry?
The other arm up by the cheek.
Up by the cheek. If you can, grab thumb to thumb, bring the back of the hand up to the cheek, and that way when you roll them over, you've got a little bit of support there. So that's good. Don't let go, otherwise the arm will just disappear back there. What's next? Leg?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, bend that up. Now, once you've bent that up, the foot plants itself and you've got a lever. This is what's turning the casualty. Once you've got them into this position, you don't then grab them by the hip and the shoulder and roll them over. This is what will turn the person. And it doesn't matter how big this individual is, that leg will always turn them. Don't pull on the knee itself, just above the knee, and then that will bring the body and they will roll over. When this hip is over the top of the other one, you know they're not going to go back, you know they're not going to roll anywhere else, so we can just put two hands to the head, put the head in a nice position where the airway is nice and open, and then you've got your casualty in the recovery position. You can bring this knee up a little bit if you feel it's necessary, but this person is not going to roll back where they were. That airway is as secure as you can possibly make it, and that is the biggest danger to this casualty. Does that make sense? Are you happy with that?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Do you want me to stop?
No, you can get up. That's fine. Well done. Now, is everybody happy with the recovery position or the principles behind it? If I had more time, I'd get you all to practice it because that's always a lot of good fun. But we don't have that time, unfortunately. So if you're happy with that, then that's fine. What I will say is that's the technically correct way in a training environment to do that. Now, if you come across an unconscious casualty, what's the chance they're just going to be lying nicely on their back in the middle of a nice open space? No. You could find your unconscious casualty in any number of different ways. The most important thing is if they're on their back, get them onto their front or onto their side. So that way you sort that tongue out. Okay? If the casualty already is on their front, that's when you don't necessarily have to move them. All right. Any further questions on that? Okay, so far we've come through the door, we've seen our casualty, we've eliminated dangers, we've gone in there, checked their response, we've found out that they're, you know, sort of unconscious. We've come in, we've opened up the airway, head tilt, chin lift, we've checked their breathing for 10 seconds, and after 10 seconds, we've actually found that they're not breathing at all. What do we do now? This is important. This is crucially important. Do you want me to give you some options?
You really need to get help.
Okay, you could get help. That's one option. They're not breathing. They are dead. Commence CPR. Chest compressions. Rescue breathing. Chest. We don't do the pulse anymore. If they're not breathing, then technically they won't have a pulse. It's a good point. Just very quickly, I'll try and do this. Lots of studies have been done, and in over 50% of cases, people, when they've been doing, people that aren't professionals, who have been trying to find a person's pulse, have got it wrong. And you would think that by getting it wrong, they would not find a pulse when one was present. But what they've actually been doing is finding pulses when there are none, which sounds a bit strange. However, if you think about it, and if you could try this, if you put your fingers on a hard surface, imagine it's somebody's neck or wrist and you're really desperate to find a pulse, after a very short period of time you will find a pulse. And I can guarantee it's not the casualties and it's not the walls. Okay, so we don't check, the point is we don't check it anymore. So, and the other thing is we try and, with the primary survey, that's what we like to call this one, to keep it as simple as possible, we just eliminated everything that really is as unnecessary as it can be. So just synthesise it into the most important aspects. Okay, so anyway, we've got a new problem. Are we going to call for help? We shouted earlier, but that didn't do us any good. Are we going to start chest compressions, or are we going to start rescue breathing? Who's for chest compression? Who's for breathing? 3, 4, 5. Who's for rescue? Who's for compressions? 1, 2, 3, 3. No. Who's for calling for more help?
I am.
1,
Because
2. Did you vote twice? No. Okay. Because? Now this could be important.
the majority of people these days carry a mobile phone.
Yep.
If you've got an unconscious patient who needs compression and breathing, you cannot physically carry on forever and a day doing that. So if you take
You can't.
30 seconds to get your phone onto speakerphone, you can start.
If you've got speakerphone.
Yeah.
What happens if you don't have your mobile phone?
If you don't have your mobile phone, you're up the creek and never have.
Well, you're not, they are.
But they are.
It's certainly, when it comes to this situation, we need a lot of things to go right in conjunction to give this person the best chance.
Yeah.
But so long as we're doing the most correct thing, whatever chance they have got, we will be giving it to them. And yes, most people do have mobile phones, and the correct answer is you must call for help. We shouted earlier, nobody came. You might want to shout again, but we must summon help. And yes, you can't do it forever and a day, but the most important thing is trying to make this person recover, and they will not do that without a defibrillator. Okay, now the primary problem that will occur inside a person who is unconscious and not breathing, okay, who has had a cardiac arrest, is a heart attack. Okay, so that's why adult CPR or instruction is so important. The only thing that will actually cure that is a defibrillator.
What about an asthma attack?
Asthma attack, that could lead on to death, but it's very rare. If you're going to come across a person an adult who is unconscious and not breathing, you can forget everything else and call it a heart attack, because statistically, overwhelmingly, that is what it will be. Okay, yes, it could be a whole host of other things, but they probably make up a fraction of a percent when it comes to actually what it is that causes a sudden cardiac arrest. So if you find an adult who is unconscious, not breathing, you must assume, unless you've got some other obvious evidence to the contrary, that it's a heart attack. Other obvious evidence might be you've just fished them out of a pool. So there's a good chance they might have drowned. Or they might have some obvious drug paraphernalia around them, in which case they might have had an overdose. But unless there's something really obvious, you must assume it's a heart attack. And you must call for an ambulance, because the only thing that will correct what the problem is a defibrillator. Okay? Now, I did go into defibrillation in quite some detail on our last session. They are extremely simple to use, and even if you've had no training at all, I would recommend that if there is one available, you get it and you have a go. And Richard, this is why it is so important to, as you know, to get these out into the community. And in the future, I do believe they will be everywhere, in every home, in every car, in every business. Okay, because this is what will save somebody's life.
If I understood it correctly, I don't know whether it did or not, but you were saying that it cannot do any harm.
No.
If it detects that there is a pulse,
Yes.
that there is things, it won't actually operate.
It can't do any harm, and that's because it detects what the actual rhythm of the heart is at the time, and it's only able to shock in the event of fibrillation. Now, I did go into quite a bit of anatomy last time, but essentially, when a heart attack occurs, it could be very large, which knocks off the heart muscle, and in which case it can't be recovered. But quite often, because the heart is also an electrical pump, it disturbs the electrical system, and therefore, instead of the heart going lopped up, lopped up, lopped up as the blood passes through the atria and the ventricles, it quivers, pretty much like jelly, quivering, okay? And what's happening is there's random electrical activity shooting off left, right, up, down, back to front, through the heart. And that is uncoordinated, and it doesn't allow the atria to contract and the ventricles to contract, and that's what makes the blood go around. So the only way to correct that fibrillation is to use a defibrillator, and they are very, very easy, and you're right, it won't fire unless it senses that fibrillation. Okay, so how do you use it? Turn it on and it'll tell you. So okay, so one, turn it on. This one's really cool. One, turn it on, and then it will actually tell you to place the pads on the chest. If you're unsure where to place it, it comes with little pictures. One on this side of the heart and one slightly around the side. So that way the electricity goes straight through the heart. Because what this machine is trying to do is deliver a small bolt of electricity straight through the heart, because electricity contracts. Okay, so once that energy hits the heart, every cell in the heart contracts at the same time, and after a moment when the electricity goes, it gives the opportunity for the heart's own electrical system to actually start firing in a normal way again and following its usual pathway. And that way you can restore that lopped up, lopped up, lopped up, and by doing that you're restoring spontaneous circulation. Does that make sense?
When you say clear in hospital, is that because nobody else has got to be near the body?
Yes. Well, nobody should be touching the body, yes. It will tell you, stand clear, preparing to shock.
So you put those on the body and everyone stands
It'll tell you to stand clear. So it's not that you have to go into the kitchen or, disappear out of the room. Just don't touch the body.
Yeah.
Is
that because it would shock you?
It would, yes. It would, because it actually takes quite a lot of energy to get a little bit to go right through the heart. Most of it is conducted around the heart, particularly via the chest wall and the muscles around it. So a lot of it will go around, but only just enough will actually get through the heart to make it fully contract. So there is a danger of getting a shock. It will tell you to stand clear. So once you attach that, once you turn it on, it'll say to attach the leads. You attach those, then it will tell you to stand clear, analysing heart rhythm. That's when it's looking for the fibrillation, and then it'll make its mind up whether it wants to shock or not.
Is it the same for a child's body as for an adult body? Same electrical charge?
Some defibrillators do have different facilities for children, but as a general rule, it's not the problem. Right. With children, they don't generally have heart attacks. So while paramedics and whatnot might be using defibrillators with them, it's usually not what the problem is. They usually have a respiratory problem.
A 13-year-old child from
Yes.
they've raised money.
And that's the shame with the younger children when they do have sort of heart-related, sort of cardiac events. Usually it's something other than a heart attack, and it's overwhelming, and there's not much you can do about it, sadly.
So yeah, so it's unlikely you'd be using this.
Yeah, it'd be unlikely you'd be using it for a child, because generally when children are unconscious and not breathing, it's a respiratory problem. And if it is a cardiac event in a child, then the outcomes are very, very poor.
Yeah.
Okay, but the thing is, this will tell you what to do. So you turn it on, it'll tell you to apply the pads, you apply the pads, it'll tell you it's analysing, and then it'll decide if there's fibrillation or not. If there is, it will tell you it's charging up. And the semi-automatic ones will tell you to press the button, the flashing orange button. And other ones will just tell you to stand clear and that it'll fire itself. So they're absolutely simple to use. Okay.
Can you use it more than once?
Most of them, yes. There are some sort of cheaper household ones which generally are only meant to use once, but usually, yes. You just
if the person doesn't respond.
Oh well, the machine. Well, after it does that, it will then tell you to commence CPR. And it'll run on a 2-minute cycle, and then it'll tell you to stop, and it'll have another look, and it'll just make its mind up what it wants to do. It'll tell you. So don't be worried about what's going to happen, sort of in the next couple of minutes. It will tell you. But the most important thing is to make sure one of these are coming. And the usual people that have these are ambulance staff, so we need to call an ambulance. And yes, has anybody here not got a mobile? That's great. Nobody has to run to the shop across the road. So, brilliant. Is everybody happy with the concept of defibrillation? I would generally spend a lot more time on it. However, at the moment, I don't think we...
How much do one of those, can you buy?
Yeah, sure you can, yes.
How much do one of those?
It varies. There are different models, different makes, different quality, and sometimes, for a good one, you're looking at towards £1,000, probably around 1,200 for something which is, very good. Very good. But the prices are coming down all the time, and the take-up's going to be bigger and better. And let's face it, this is what we're going to need if we are going to survive a sudden cardiac arrest.
See, they've got them at King's Cross at the moment.
Yep.
Quite a few of them.
Yes, and they're springing up in more and more places. And a lot of large businesses are putting them in their premises. I mean. Businesses aren't necessarily responsible for their customers, that come onto their premises. However, if customers do have cardiac arrests, they need to be doing something about it. And so people are starting to put these in big places, doctors' surgeries, shopping centres, warehouses like B&Q and all that sort of places. So,
would you need training, saying in a real emergency, if you administered that, would you be sued or something?
Not necessarily. If you're doing what I'm teaching you now, then no, there's no chance that you're being sued. And I'm not aware of anybody in Australia or the United Kingdom actually being sued for doing first aid. Now, bearing in mind, I have been aware of some people that have been sued because they have actually sort of, in a situation with a motor vehicle, they've gone and extracted a person from a motor vehicle without reason to, and that's caused a spinal injury. Okay, now that I do know of a case where somebody has been sued for that. But otherwise, I'm not aware of anyone being sued if they're sort of roughly following, sort of the right guideline. Okay.
So you've got 10 minutes.
10 minutes, right. Well, we're going to go on to our next section, which is...
Can I just quickly ask on the mobile phone there what number everybody would call for the emergency?
999.
Right, because
There is 112.
If you dial 112 from your mobile, if your network, if you're out of range for your normal network, it wouldn't be a problem because any network, the nearest, strongest network will pick it up.
Yeah.
And also by doing 112, you may not know where you are. With it doing 112, the satellite then can pick you up and pinpoint where you are, so it's not...
Another good thing about 112 is it's Europe-wide.
Yeah.
Don't know if anybody realised that. So if you're in Poland, you can ring 112 and tell them about your cardiac arrest. Hopefully they'll be able to talk to you. Okay.
So what's the first one you said?
Sorry?
You said the other good thing about 112 is it's what?
Europe-wide.
Europe-wide.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, but call an ambulance, and yes, and then you can actually be assured that you've got a defibrillator, you've got professionals coming to back up what you're about to do. Because I've just said that defibrillation is essential, but I don't want to actually put down cardiopulmonary resuscitation, because it's cardiopulmonary resuscitation which is going to give that person that little bit of extra time while that defibrillator comes. Does that make sense?
Have they not got a system where, like, a defibrillator is near a location and you could call that? Because obviously sometimes ambulances might be 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on where you are. If you're in Sawtree, you're in luck, because they've got first responders and they've got defibrillators all around the place.
And they would contact them.
So you just have to contact somebody in a house and they would generally know where the defibrillators are. If you're in a...
two first responders every day, and they'll cover St Ives, Fenstanton and all that area.
So if you phone 999, they would go to that
There
person?
first.
Right.
But again, it depends on where you are. It is a lottery. And if this person collapses next to the ambulance station, then, you know, they're possibly in a better state than somebody who collapses halfway up Ben Nevis, who are there going to be in some desperate trouble. Does that make sense? Now,
we were in Lincolnshire last Christmas and we had one go down. Luckily, the train fire station is not far. They just happened to drive on there in their rapid response car. I did persuade him to come out and he said, "Oh no, we want to, we're not going up, I've got to go downstairs and pick someone up." I said, "Well..."
yeah, you know, there's unconscious, not breathing.
He was there to know
Yeah.
before arrives and ambulance will...
But the fact is, things have got to be done quick. And there is a certain sequence. Sorry?
Sorry, how long do you have?
How long do you have? Excellent question. In short, 10 minutes. Okay? That's in short. From the onset of the heart attack. Okay? From the onset of that defibrillation. Now, ideally, they would want to be defibrillated within 3 minutes. They do say that statistically, every minute that goes past is a reduction of 10% in the chance of survival. Okay? So even I can work out that after 10 minutes, the chance after that is pretty remote. There are special circumstances, and they are very special, but on the whole, statistically, 3 minutes best chance, after 10 minutes, sorry. And that is a whole lot of problems, because A, you've got to be there when it happens. Well, it starts from when it happens. When if you arrive, you don't know how long it's been there, but you just can work with what you've got. Okay, so to give them the best possible chance that they have at the time that you find them. Okay.
Can you not try striking the chest? Doesn't that?
You can do, but it might just bruise them or hurt them. Now,
If
what
they
you
die anyway, doesn't that initiate a shock to their heart?
it does, and that thump is actually a known procedure which I teach to people in hospital. Okay. Now, technically, that precordial thump is meant to be delivered to a person who has a witnessed arrest, so they're already hooked up to monitors and machines, and delivered within 30 seconds. And if you think about it, it is the lowest form of delivering a charge to the body. It's very, very low in actual charge, but if it's delivered within 30 seconds, then, you know, it could work. However, I only would teach that to healthcare professionals on a witnessed arrest where the person is fully monitored and within 30 seconds. So outside of that,
What do you mean fully monitored?
they're already wired up to machines, and which have just gone the proverbial flat line,
so you
and you think, you're looking at the machines and arrest. Look at them, they're arrest.
And you do that even in a hospital, even if there's a defibrillator?
Well, if you're right there, then why not? It doesn't.
Right.
It only takes a moment.
So
But
it's
yeah,
equal to a defibrillator?
in its very, very lowest sense. That's why it's only really good within the first 30 seconds. Okay. But, you know, for our purposes, it's not going to be useful. We need a defibrillator.
Right.
And anything we can do to get that defibrillator there is going to be helpful.
You said that's the first 30 seconds to do the...
That's in a witnessed arrest, so where the person is actually connected up to machinery, which is monitoring their heart, and you are there at the time when that heart stops.
And then after that, would you then do, if you're in the hospital?
In a hospital, yeah. Oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
then do the defibrillator?
At the same time as doing that, I'll be shouting, pushing the emergency button and getting all sorts of attention. So yeah, you know, so you seem to be doing about 20 different things at the same time. But if you're there at the time, you can do that because you've hit the buzzer and other people are coming with the correct equipment, and it all's meant to happen swift and smooth. And that's the point, you know, you need a bunch of different things to happen in sequence and rapidly. And if we're in hospital, then that can happen. If you're not, then it makes it much harder and the chances go down.
And the success chances in hospital when you've done the strike, does that work quite well?
The strike itself might actually have a result, probably not. You still need the defibrillator. The chances of a person surviving cardiac arrest in hospital are obviously much better than in the community, and at the moment in the community the rates are very, very low.
Really?
Yeah, very low.
Because of response time?
Because the whole string of events that need to happen don't occur quick enough or in time, in order. So what the person needs is to be found quickly, immediately if possible. They need to have rapid defibrillation, or rapid CPR and rapid defibrillation. Okay? If you've got a defibrillator on the spot, stick it straight on. And they need to have rapid backup from professional care. So paramedics, hospital staff, A&E staff, intensive care. That is still very important. But it's got to be those four things.
Before heart attacks, do you get say like a good half an hour where someone's
Can we do CPR another time? But I do want to actually deal with people's questions along the way, and time is constrained. I know we're running down to the last few minutes. Do you mind if I just give one very quick sort of overview of CPR? I'll try and do it in a nutshell, okay? Right, let's take you. So far, we now have an ambulance on our way, okay? So we know that we're going to have backup very soon. We need to start CPR. This time, we start with chest compressions, not rescue breathing, okay? So you go straight for the middle of the chest. Finding the middle of the chest, find the bottom of the ribs, top of the shoulder, straight in the middle. And that puts you right in the middle of the sternum. Now, to deliver an effective chest compression, you need to, if you can, put your fingers, interlock your fingers and get right over the top of the chest. Keep your arms straight. If they bend, then you will bounce a bit and you won't get as much force going into their chest, because what you're doing is trying to squish their heart between their spine and their sternum. All right? By doing that, you're putting pressure on the atria and the ventricles and you're forcing the blood out and through. And that pushes the blood around the body. Now, the thing about a heart attack victim is they still have the oxygen inside their body that they had when they first had the heart attack, because when they started fibrillating, the circulation system stopped immediately. Okay? So you're now pushing the oxygen through. So, interlink your hands, hands on the middle of the chest, right over the top and straight in. You want to deliver 30 chest compressions at a rate of 100 to 120 beats per minute, so fast. You want to go in a third of the way down, or about 5 centimetres, and you want to fully release it back to its starting position, okay, where the chest is now. Does that make sense? So, let's give that a go. How many was that?
30.
Excellent. If you forgot part way through, don't worry, guess. Just carry on with it, okay? We start with chest compressions now because rescue breathing is not as important.
Just to make it clear, Dean, this is a scenario where there's not a defib available.
We've already called for an ambulance, it's on its way.
Right.
If there was a defibrillator right there, I would put that on.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's where there's nothing available, so let's go for this.
Yes. I won't go into technical bits, but yeah, if you've got a defibrillator, stick it on. If you don't have a defibrillator there and you've called one that's on its way, chest compressions, 30, fast and deep, okay? Now, rescue breathing. I recommend that you do rescue breathing. However, if for any reason you're not comfortable to do rescue breathing, and let's face it, they might have vomited, there might be blood, could be all sorts of stuff. If for any reason you're not confident to do rescue breathing, don't. Just carry on with chest compressions because it's so much more important. If you are happy to do some rescue breathing, head tilt, chin lift, pinch the nose, good seal right around the mouth, and 2 rescue breaths. And it is literally as quick as that. You want basically 1 second, blow it in, let it out, blow it in, let it out. You don't want to try and blow them up like a balloon, because then you're just pushing air not into the lungs but into the stomach. And along with a lot of chest compressions, swish, swill, you'll get a return. So, 32. If you're not happy with the rescue breathing, just do the chest compressions. That's CPR in a nutshell. I'd like to go into much more detail, but I'm afraid time doesn't allow. When you stop, when the ambulance arrives, and I don't mean they get to the door there and you think, thank God you're here. They've got to be right there, taken over from you. When you finish this 30, I'm taking over. Does that make sense? And if it's not the ambulance, it's somebody else that can do CPR. This is a very effort-filled procedure. You will get very, very worn out very quickly. If somebody else can do CPR, take it in turns. The other time you can stop is when you physically can't do it any longer, or if this person responds. It's highly unlikely that they will respond. Okay? So that's essentially CPR for an adult.
How long do you keep them alive by doing that?
How long? Even the best team doing CPR, time is very limited. I mean, there are examples like that footballer who was down for a very long time. The care he received was exceptional, and I guess because of his physical condition as well, that allowed him to go longer. But really, you're talking minutes. But the point is, this person already has oxygen in his system, which you are pushing around his body, and at least for the first few minutes, while you're waiting for that ambulance to arrive, you've got a half decent chance. Yeah, because that oxygen can be pushed around. It can keep the heart, the lungs, the brain going that few minutes longer while that defibrillator turns up. And that's the best chance this person's got.
So the real critical thing is that you have immediate access to CPR, to defibrillator.
A defibrillation, yes.
So you've got them, the right specification, and you know where they are, and you can get at them.
Yeah, I mean, if you knew there was one in this building, when you found that person was unconscious and not breathing, you don't have to do anything with them because they're dead, then you could go and get that defibrillator, which is right there, stick it on them. There isn't. We might be able to change that at some point.
Yeah. But you think that with things like maps now on your smartphones and automatic location systems, it's not a dream, it's a practicality. You could actually geolocate AEDs all the way around Huntingdon, and you use an app to find them.
Not just Huntingdon, but the world.
Yeah. So this is not rocket science.
No, it's not. It's well within our capabilities now. And
Clear. It's unconscious, not breathing. You know there's one in the building, it's at the other end. You can run and go and get that and leave them not pumping whatever.
Yes, because it's that defibrillator that is going to save them. And I mean, okay, you don't want to run down the street, around the corner, into the shop, tell them what's going on, get the thing, run back around the corner, up the street, and because by that stage they're probably gone. You're probably better off ringing an ambulance. But in the end, you have to make a choice. What do you do if you are literally halfway up Nevis?
Decisions have to be made.
And at some point you've got to say, well, it's going to be quicker for an ambulance to get here than what I can do to go and get that. So, so long as they're on the way, then I'll carry on with this. Or, you just have to play the situation as you find it, or the scene. And in the end, it's not going to hurt you, but you're just doing your best for the victim, and you're giving them what chance they have. Okay, so the whole point of that primary survey is to stop them hopefully getting to this point by keeping the airway open. But if they do get to this point and it's an adult, they'll need defibrillation.
And just quickly, Dean, sorry for the question, the child baby CPR,
Yes.
Is that slightly different?
I think we might have to end this, and I might have to tell anybody who's interested after. There are some differences, and so I'll tell you after. Yeah. That's fine. So I'd like, any other questions? I'd like to thank you very much for Thank you.